The whisper hit Hollywood like a thunderclap. One quiet, devastating no from a red-haired global superstar, and suddenly the power balance flipped, the mask slipped, and a royal Hollywood fairy tale started cracking right down the middle. Ed Sheeran said no. Not maybe, not later, not let's circle back. A clean, surgical rejection. And the shockwave? It tore straight through Montecito, rattled a marriage already humming with tension, and exposed the truth nobody wanted to say out loud. The Sussex magic doesn't work the way it used to. Because this wasn't just any celebrity turning down an invite. This was Harry's friend. One of the few people from his old life who stuck around after the titles, the exile, the interviews, the scorched earth. And somehow, Meghan walked right past her husband, reached into his personal vault of loyalty, and made a pitch that landed with a thud so loud it echoed back as humiliation. Here's where it gets messy. This wasn't framed as a favor. This wasn't a humble ask. According to those close enough to hear the pitch, it came dressed up as an opportunity. A glossy, polished vision of a big Invictus moment, lights, music, headlines, and right at the center of it all, not the veterans, not the wounded warriors, not the people the games were built for, but Meghan herself. And Ed's team? They didn't even blink. They saw it immediately. The imbalance, the misfire, the way the spotlight seemed to tilt away from service and toward self. And in an industry where image is oxygen, where one wrong association can poison years of careful reputation building, the verdict was instant. No, thank you. Wrapped in polite language, softened with scheduling excuses. But make no mistake, this was a choice. A calculated step back from the Sussex orbit. And that's what makes this hurt so badly. Because Ed and Harry weren't manufactured friends. No forced smiles, no PR handshake. This was real. Late night laughs, casual hangouts. A bond formed when Harry still had one foot in the world he left behind. Ed was safe, normal, unimpressed by crowns, loyal without wanting anything in return, which is exactly why this cuts so deep. Behind closed doors, the reaction wasn't pretty. Meghan reportedly stunned, genuinely shocked that the answer wasn't yes, as if the weight of her name alone should have sealed the deal, as if proximity to her brand was still currency enough to override instinct. Harry, on the other hand, was blindsided because he didn't know, not beforehand, not during. He found out after the rejection landed, after the bridge had already been shaken. And suddenly, he wasn't just dealing with a declined proposal, he was staring at the possible wreckage of a friendship he'd never offered up in the first place. That's the part people keep glossing over. This wasn't just professional, this was personal. Invictus isn't a side project for Harry, it's the last uncontaminated piece of his former life. The one thing that still feels sacred, purposeful, real, and watching it get reshaped, reframed, pitched like a stage for someone else's visibility, that's not just awkward, that's destabilizing. And insiders said this wasn't an accident. Meghan allegedly believed she could sell it better herself, that her vision needed no filter, that her presence elevated the moment rather than distracted from it. But here's the brutal irony. Ed Sheeran doesn't need elevation. He fills stadiums. He sells out continents. He doesn't borrow relevance, he generates it. And when a pitch walks in acting like it's doing him the favor, the disconnect becomes impossible to ignore. Ed's team saw a red flag parade. They saw controversy baked into the association. They saw headlines waiting to explode. They saw an event meant to honor sacrifice quietly morphing into a brand showcase. And they saw something else too, a pattern they'd been watching from a distance for years. The Sussex effect. Projects that arrive with thunder and leave with silence. Deals announced with fanfare and delivered with disappointment. Relationships that start warm and end quietly distant. Ed's refusal didn't happen in a vacuum. It landed in the middle of a celebrity exodus that's been unfolding in slow motion. One by one, the big names faded. The calls went unanswered. The invitations stopped coming. And the industry, always polite, always indirect, said what it needed to say without ever saying it publicly. We're stepping back because being close to the Sussexes now comes with risk, not creative risk, reputational risk, the kind that sticks, the kind that turns a charitable act into a debate, a performance into a political statement, a friendship into collateral damage. And Ed, he's known for staying clean, drama-free, grounded. His brand is authenticity, not chaos. So when faced with the choice between loyalty and self-preservation, he chose the narrow path that preserved both, distance from Meghan without publicly burning burning Harry. But that balance, it's fragile, and Harry knows it. Sources whisper that the tension at home has thickened since that conversation stalled, that this wasn't a one-off mistake but part of a pattern Harry can't unsee anymore. His relationships quietly becoming assets, his past slowly being repurposed, his friendships no longer his alone. And the loneliness? It's creeping in, because Ed represented continuity, a thread to the man Harry used to be before everything fractured. And watching that thread strain, not because of betrayal but because of overreach, hurts in a way headlines can't capture. The silence from Montecito since then? Deafening. No clapback, no correction, no denial, just damage control humming in the background and advisors scrambling to pretend nothing happened while knowing everything did. And this was only the beginning. The fallout didn't stop with a single no. It spread quietly, like smoke under a locked door, curling into rooms nobody wanted to acknowledge were already on fire. Because once Ed Sheeran stepped back, others took note. That's the unspoken rule of celebrity gravity. When someone that clean, that universally liked, that professionally careful chooses distance, it sends a message without a single word being spoken. Phones start ringing less. Invitations feel suddenly complicated. Smiles stay polite, but the warmth drains out of the room. And inside Montecito, the mood reportedly shifted from stunned disbelief to something sharper, defensive. Meghan, according to whispers, didn't interpret the rejection as feedback. She interpreted it as defiance, as someone failing to recognize the scale of what she was offering. The logic, insiders say, was dangerously circular. If Ed didn't see the value, then Ed was the one miscalculating. That mindset matters because it explains why the pattern keeps repeating. The celebrity drought didn't happen overnight. It's been a slow retreat, a collective recalibration. Once upon a time, the Sussex name opened doors effortlessly. Now it raises eyebrows first, questions second, and enthusiasm? That's the rarest commodity of all, and Harry feels it. People still like him, they still soften around him, they still see the wounded boy behind the headlines. But liking someone and wanting to tie your professional reputation to their life are two very different things. And more, people are choosing sympathy from afar over proximity. That's the quiet cruelty of Hollywood. It never announces rejection. It simply withdraws oxygen and waits. And the Ed situation forced Harry to confront something he's been avoiding for a long time. Not everyone who steps away is doing it because of him. That realization is heavy. Sources said this incident triggered conversations that weren't scripted, weren't rehearsed, and definitely weren't comfortable. Questions about boundaries, about who speaks for whom, about why decisions involving his oldest friendships keep happening without his knowledge. Those conversations don't explode, they erode. Because Meghan reportedly doesn't see it as crossing a line. She sees it as efficiency, as leadership, as protecting the bigger vision. And Harry, caught between love and unease, finds himself nodding in moments where his instincts are quietly screaming. And then there's Invictus. This is where it gets dangerous. Invictus survives on credibility, on authenticity, on trust. Veterans don't show up for celebrity spectacle, they show up because the mission feels sacred. And when even the perception arises that the games are becoming a backdrop for personal branding, the damage is immediate. Ed's team understood that. They understood optics. They understood that once the narrative shifts, you don't get to rewind it. And now, behind the scenes, there's concern that Invictus is being pulled into the same gravitational field as everything else Sussex touched, where intention gets overshadowed by interpretation. Harry knows this, and it terrifies him. Because if Invictus slips, if even that becomes contested ground, then what does he have left that's purely his? Friends have noticed the change in him, the way his laughter doesn't linger, the way he hesitates before reaching out, the way he seems smaller in rooms he once commanded naturally. And every time another celebrity quietly declines, it reinforces the same unspoken fear. Was leaving a mistake? Not the marriage. Not the love, but the execution, the strategy, the assumption that goodwill was infinite. It wasn't. What makes this moment especially volatile is that Meghan doesn't appear to be slowing down. If anything, insiders say she's doubling down, convinced that persistence will break resistance, that the right project, the right moment, the right alignment will snap everything back into place. But Hollywood doesn't reward persistence when it smells desperation, and people are starting to talk quietly. Off the record, the same sentence keeps surfacing in different rooms. It's just complicated. Complicated to work with. Complicated to attach your name to. Complicated to explain when things inevitably go sideways. That word, complicated, is the kiss of death. And Harry hears it now, even when it's not said out loud. There's also the issue of control. Sources suggest that Meghan's need to manage narratives has tightened, not loosened, as resistance grows. And that creates a feedback loop. The more she pushes, the more people pull away, confirming her belief that she has to push harder. Harry, meanwhile, is reportedly craving simplicity, familiarity, the kind of connection that doesn't come with strategy decks or brand considerations. And watching Ed Sheeran, of all people, choose peace over proximity hit him in the gut, because Ed didn't leave loudly. He didn't lecture. He didn't grandstand. He just opted out. And sometimes that's the loudest rejection of all. Now advisors are scrambling. Should Harry reach out personally? Should there be an apology? And if so, whose? Should they pretend this never happened and move forward as if momentum hasn't already stalled? Every option carries risk. If Harry distances himself publicly, it fractures the united front. If he defends the move privately, resentment festers. And if nothing changes, the pattern continues until there's nothing left to salvage. The irony is brutal. Harry sacrificed everything to protect his wife from being used, exploited, diminished, and now he's watching his own life slowly hollow out in the process. And Meghan? She's fighting a different fear entirely, irrelevance, because the world moves fast, sympathy expires, stories age, and without constant motion, constant visibility, the spotlight shifts elsewhere. The fear of being forgotten can make even smart people reckless. Which brings us back to Ed. He didn't just say no to a performance, he said no to becoming part of a narrative he couldn't control. No to being folded into a brand war, no to risking his reputation for a moment that didn't align with his values, and the industry noticed. The question now isn't whether Ed made the right call, it's whether others will follow. Because once the illusion cracks, it never fully heals. The Sussexes built their post-royal life on access, attention, and influence. And access is tightening. Attention is souring. Influence is being questioned. Inside Montecito, the silence continues. Outside, the whispers grow louder. And somewhere in the middle of it all is a prince who gave up a kingdom, watching doors close not because he's unwanted, but because the people around him have become too expensive to trust. That's not gossip. That's gravity. And gravity always wins. Always wins. Always wins. Always.